morning, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our AX webinar series. We're really lucky we have Robert Stogner here to talk about Available to Promise. So Robert, I will let you begin.
So hopefully everybody can hear me well. This is a Dynamics Care webinar on Available to Promise, the Available to Promise functionality within Dynamics AX 2009. And what we're going to go through today is some slides to give you a general idea of how this functionality works, and also demoing in the software as well. So as we get started here, what I'm going to do is go through a couple of the things related to how to set up for using Available to Promise. And one of those areas there is just to talk about what Available to Promise is and what it isn't. ATP, or Available to Promise, meaning what is on hand and available quantity-wise. So it is looking at your on hand for the item in question when you're setting up a sales order. It also considers when that available quantity can be shipped and received in order to calculate the dates. Now, when I say it, when it can be shipped, it's, again, only looking at what is available in inventory based on the future receipts that may be out there, and also future issues that may be taking away from that. What ATP is not, it is not capable to promise, or CTP. And that's a term that you probably will hear here again. You also hear it with the next coming version, AX 2012, because they will have this capability, this functionality in that software, from what I understand. Now that could change. I don't know for sure. So it's not capable to promise, although if the functionality within the current version is set to look at planned orders, in some cases it can work this way. And we'll talk about a little bit about this in a little bit further in the presentation. Some of the things that will need to be set up in order to utilize this functionality. The functionality itself is actually called delivery date control. So what is used to determine the dates that are out there that it uses for delivery dates? If you've noticed in AX 2009, obviously we've got the both the requested ship date and requested receipt date. We also have the confirmed ship date and confirmed receipt date. So it's a little different than previous versions, so it's actually calculating that based on a lot of different information. First of which is order entry deadline. And this is related to time of order entry. So you can have, and we'll show this in a little bit, you can have specific situations set up that will say if an order is entered beyond a given time of day. For instance, if you have it set at 10 o'clock in the morning, then the system will automatically adjust the ship date to the next day, meaning that if you don't get your order in on time, then we can't possibly ship it the same day. A lot of times this is utilized by make-to-stock companies who already have inventory in stock and available. It's just that their shipping process, it may take them some time to pack and ship. So if you don't get it in, maybe by noon or 2 o'clock or something like that, they can't possibly ship it the same day. So it automatically will adjust it to the next day. Now, from the customer, what it's going to be using for delivery date control to determine dates is the delivery address, of course. It's going to say, okay, how long is it going to take to get it to that delivery address? It'll also look at the receipt calendar that's applied to the customer or the delivery address, whichever one is there. And what that receipt calendar does is basically say this is when the customer is able to receive the goods that you've shipped them. They may have days where they're closed for receipts and they don't allow anybody to bring the goods in. So you can set up a receipt calendar for them. You also have a mode of delivery, which indicates how you're going to ship it to your customer, and depending on the mode of delivery, you could have a lot of factors there that can determine how long it's going to take to get to the customer. And then the shipping warehouse itself, you can also have on the customer defaulting. Now, of course, that can change on the order, but the shipping warehouse basically says, okay, where is it coming from? So that may determine the length of time that it takes to get from one place to another. From the mode of delivery, you can attach transport days from the warehouse to the address. Now, this is something that we'll see a little bit in just a few minutes, where you can set up for each mode of delivery, you can set up a number of days that it takes to get from a given warehouse to a given address. You can narrow that address down to the state, or you can go all the way down to the very address, or you can just use zip code, whatever the case may be. And we'll see that in a few minutes as well. And then there's also a transport calendar for the delivery mode and the warehouse. So basically it says that this delivery mode has its own calendar. For instance, like, if you had UPS, you know that they don't ship on Sunday. So for their transport calendar, you would utilize a calendar that has Sundays blocked for pickup, and then any dates get adjusted based on that if you use that that mode of delivery. From the warehouse, another thing that's also used is the coverage calendar. It basically says that I am closed on certain days. This warehouse is closed on certain days, or it could be open and working, but it could be closed for pickup, and we'll see that as well. Now, as far as order entry deadlines, this is straight from the documentation that you'll get, user documentation. It says order entry deadlines determine the cutoff time after which orders are shipped 1 day later. Example, order entry deadline is set for 12 on Wednesday. The sales order is entered at 12:30 on Wednesday. Therefore, the earliest requested shipping date is Thursday, the following day, presuming this is an open day based on all those other calendars that we talked about. The one thing I have learned is that the code is based on today's date, always today's date. So whenever somebody's entering an order, you know how you have on in AX, you have what's called the system date, where you can actually change the system date and actually backdate things. In this case, it doesn't work that way. It won't look at the system date. It always looks at today's date. In other words, whatever the server date is, if you will. So that is one thing I've learned. And that's one thing that, depending on, how you want to handle things, is giving the abilities for people to backdate an order. I don't think you want to do that anyway. So, all right. So taking a look at order entry deadlines, this is a screenshot here. So before even selecting a customer, the order entry deadline is applied to the requested ship and receipt dates during order entry. So I'm going to go over and take a look at the software. Now, where you might expect to find order entry deadlines is in maybe accounts receivable if it's related to orders, but AX, or I guess Microsoft doesn't think that way. Order entry deadlines is actually in the inventory setup menu under distribution. And if I open that screen up, you notice that you can have multiple different scenarios set up. I can have one set up for all sites and all order entry deadline groups. You get a default time set up for each day of the week. So you look at that one and it has, okay, if it's after 6 a.m. On Monday through Friday, it's going to get pushed to the next day. On Saturday and Sunday, it basically says anytime you enter an order on Saturday or Sunday, it's going to get pushed to the next day. So more than likely, they've also got a calendar out there that says that those days are blocked as well. So like if you enter one on Saturday, it's going to try to push it to Sunday. But Sunday, as far as the calendar is concerned, shipping calendar, I can't ship it on Sunday either, so it's going to push it to Monday. All right? As long as all that's being taken into consideration. Then you can also assign what's called order entry deadline groups to your customers. So maybe some of your more important customers, you might say, well, if they get it in at least by 4 o'clock, then, it's good for that day. Or maybe they're right down the street and it's easier for you to ship it to them, then you might do that. So you can actually assign different groups to different customers and give different order entry deadline dates. All right? Now, what I'm going to do is also go over to accounts receivable and sales orders and kind of show you what I mean with regard to the order entry deadlines being applied. So obviously, when I start a new order here, even before I choose a customer, if I look at the requested ship and receipt date here, you notice that it's already changed to February 3rd. Because the one I had set, I don't have a particular group associated with the customer yet. So all it knows is right now it's after 6 a.m., so it's going to go ahead and push it to the next day. All right? Okay. We'll get a little further here in a bit. Transport days. Transport days, again, is applied to each combination of delivery mode, warehouse, and address. I got a screenshot here, but it doesn't actually show the whole thing. I'm going to go over there and take a look at that as well. But you notice that you can have a bunch of possible different combinations. So, for instance, this shipping, some of these examples here shows that, from warehouse 11, I can ship to Denmark, which is, just the whole country region, in 20 days. Then you got one for U.S. Maryland, I can ship in 5 days. And then it gets a little more specific. It says, okay, for this particular zip code and county, I can ship it in 5 days. So that's where you can get into some of the, maybe some of the bigger states of Texas or something like that. The east end you can get to in so many days, but the west end you got to add another day or something. All right. So going back over to the software, I'm going to cancel this right now. And again, you find that same calendar for transport days under distribution and inventory. And this is how it's set up, and you can have a shipping point warehouse. You can filter up here for which warehouse you want to look at, and the receiving point address, or you can actually have a receiving point be warehouse, where you can, also define. This is also good for transfers. If you're going to transfer from one warehouse to another, you can also have it transport days set up for the transfer. Okay. So looking at a couple of these, though, if you notice, if I select this one, I've got a couple different scenarios set up. Shipping to Maryland, and I've got just a general 5-day rule there from shipping warehouse 11. But if you notice down the bottom, I've got actually modes of delivery specified where if I ship by UPS ground, then my transport days is 5 days. But if I ship UPS next day, it's 1 day. So you can also, like I said, have this set up for multiple different combinations. And, if you wanted to, this could get very, very specific and, of course, very lengthy. Okay. Okay, accounts receivable parameters. There is a couple of fields in accounts receivable parameters that we need to consider. Delivery date control is one of those as a default. You have the choice of none, sales lead time, which actually uses either the sales lead time applied to this default here, which is there's a field right below that to set that default sales lead time, or the sales lead time can come from the item, once an item is actually applied to the order. But sometimes the sales lead time is just in general, we were saying, is that we want to have a couple days to process the order. Now, we recommend setting this delivery date control to sales lead time. The reason is if you use none, then order entry deadlines are ignored. In other words, if you don't have any delivery date control, none, then when you're entering the order, it doesn't pay attention to order entry deadline. So it's going to just basically say today. If you set it to sales lead time, you can have a sales lead time field just below that set to 0 and not really actually have a sales lead time as a default, but then it would still, though, look at the order entry deadline in that case. All right? That's kind of why we recommend that. Then the other option there, obviously, is ATP. Now, I don't recommend you setting ATP as a default for entering orders. The reason is that ATP really is dependent upon the item. If you have ATP set here, then it's trying to calculate ATP before it even has an item when you're actually entering the order. You can have ATP settings individually on each individual item, and that's typically what you want to have. If you have it here, it's going to do it even before an item is assigned. So it may not be reasonable in that case. Well, won't be applicable, in other words. And then, of course, the default ATP time fence. If you have ATP set here and you have an ATP time fence, if you don't set something on the item, it uses this by default. So understand that about your items as well. If you don't have something set on the default order settings for the item, and we'll look at that a little bit as well. Okay. Like I mentioned, even if you choose none for the delivery date control, the default sales lead time will be applied upon order entry. Your ATP lead time applied when ATP is chosen for delivery date control, and that's on the order header. So what ATP lead time means is it basically means that it's going to try as far as it can to find available inventory, and this ATP lead time is the kind of a limit that says I'm only going to go so far, and then I'm going to stop after so many days and give up, and basically the next day after that will be my date that it gets chosen. So if there's none on hand, it'll go so far and it'll stop. Again, when you're first entering an order, you don't have an item specified, so it's going to go to the ATP lead time every time if you have ATP selected in that parameter. Okay, item default order settings. This is where we get into setting individual things for the item itself. But before we look at that, let me go over to the sales order and let's talk about some of the things we've discussed so far related to the initial settings, just based on entering the order for the very first time. First of all, I'm going to look at the parameters. My parameters, it's on the shipment tab of the accounts receivable parameters. What I have set here is sales lead time, delivery date control, but I don't have any days specified here. And of course, I don't have ATP time fence specified here. The other one that's included here is ATP include planned orders. We'll talk about that in a little bit with regard to items and how you want to decide whether or not to view planned orders as possible receipts when we get into talking about the item settings. But knowing the default setup here for the order, I'm going to go up to the sales order and create a new order here. I'm going to select customer. And when I look at the dates that it's already trying to generate, I notice that the requested ship date is 2/3. And again, that's based on the fact that I have an order entry deadline set up that's going to push it to the next day always. The requested receipt date is now set to 2/9. And that 2/9 is basically coming from a couple different scenarios. I've got a motor delivery. I've got a site in a warehouse that was defaulting for this customer. So all three of those could have impact on the receipt date. One of the things you can do is that if you click on simulate delivery date, you can actually see the possible dates. And of course, the first one out there is the ship date of 2/3 and available receipt date of 2/9. Now, of course, you can change that if you need to and actually click transfer to requested. When you use the simulate delivery dates, if you make changes to either the mode of delivery, so for instance, if I say, well, that's not acceptable, let me see what UPS next day error would give me. Next day error says, okay, I can actually ship that on 2/3 and get it to you on 2/4. But again, if you look at this one, I've got a little message there, message box that says, this ship date is not valid. Order entry deadline is passed in the shipping location time zone. So when it recalculates, it's still seeing the order entry deadline in that regard. Okay, so it's saying that one's not can't use that one, but I can use that one. And if I click that and click transfer to requested, it'll actually go over to the order. Now notice though, the other thing that came over was the mode of delivery. So anything you change on that screen, mode of delivery, site, warehouse, and as well as the date itself, once you hit transfer to requested, or any of the transfer buttons that's up here, it will carry those changes over to the order. All right, so let me change this back first of all to UPS ground, and I'm going to pick that date, transfer back. All right, now the other option here is obviously to change the delivery date control. You can basically say, well, I don't want that. I'm just going to change it back to none and override the dates that I have here, or change it to ATP, which again, at this point, I don't know how much good ATP is because you don't have an item selected. All right. The other thing you can do is also say confirm those dates, and what that will do is that we have 4 dates. You've got 2 for requested and 2 for confirmed. If you check this box, it'll update the order header with both the requested dates and the confirmed dates with those dates that you have listed. What's good about that, one of the situations that will come up is that you'll have requested dates for your customer, but at the time you start putting items on the order, depending on the availability of the items, those dates will start changing. If you have confirmed dates already established, when those dates start changing, only the confirmed dates will change, or only, basically the confirmed dates for that line item. If you don't have confirmed dates already set, then your requested dates will start changing. All right, so I'm going to show you an example of that. I'm going to not check the confirmed dates here. I'm going to click OK. And if I look at the delivery header here, you notice that I've got those dates specified on the header. And I've got them also down the line item before I've chosen an item so far. Okay? So now I'm going to choose an item. Let's see, I think that's the line item. No, that's not the line. Underscore, that's it. As soon as I choose an item, all right, and I tab out of there, and it has a quantity. I have a default quantity, minimum quantity associated with that item. As soon as I tab out of there, you notice that it changed the requested receipt date and ship date. Because it's already looking at the availability of that item, and it says, you know what, I don't have enough on hand right now to ship that tomorrow. I can't ship it until the 7th. So this sets up for me, this kind of sets up a precedence with the customer. I don't know if you can get them to agree to that, but that's really not the date they're requesting it. So why would you want that to change? But if the situation comes where you're entering this order and you've got everything turned on and everything is working, and you basically can say to the customer, that our first possible ship date is the 7th, and Depending on the mode of delivery, I can get it to you by the 12th. Will they accept that or not? I don't know. But that's what it's going to do. Now, what I'm also going to do is I'm going to go back up here to the delivery date of the header. I'm going to delete that line and simulate delivery date. And I'm going to use that same set of dates, and this time I'm going to transfer it to confirm. So now I have the confirm date on my header. Now when I go down to the item and type in the item and tab over, you notice that the requested dates don't change, but the confirmed dates do change. They change according to the item. So this is why, on the confirmed date checkbox on the order header, it might be a good idea to go ahead and apply the confirmed date to the header, knowing that that's the date that will change when you get down to the item. Okay? Okay, let me go back to my presentation here for a second. Okay, 11:30, good. All right, item default order setting. On the item itself, you have several things that you can set. You can set a sales lead time, which is basically your minimum lead time for doesn't matter what the quantity is. You're basically saying that I can't ship it next day. I have to have a couple days. Then there's also your ATP time fence that you can set per item, and this again is how far out will it look per day before giving up and offering the next day after the time fence. So within the next 7 days, if I have it set for 7, within the next 7 days I cannot find available quantity to ship, then it'll stop after 7 days, and the 8th day will be the day that it presents as the possible ship date. In this situation, the time fence is important from a standpoint of saying, you know what, especially if I'm going to make the order scenario, I'm not going to have inventory out there available. Okay, and this is where we are talking about capable to promise. It's looking only at available inventory. It's not looking at the possibility of, okay, if I can make it, when can I ship it if I start making it today? It's not doing that. All right, so that's why, when it's talking about available, it's actually talking about available right now or available in the future from the standpoint of existing orders and their receipt. All right, so it's important for the time fence to be set in such a way that that the time fence doesn't allow, especially in a make-to-order situation, to go way out into the future when it's not really realistic. All right. A lot of times people will if they have a make-to-order situation, their sales lead time and their ATP time fence, or whatever the case may be, depending on which one they use, will be the same thing, because they know that they can make something, definitely make something within a 2 week lead time, if you will. Now, one option that you have is also to include planned orders. Now, this is mostly used if you're in a make-to-stock situation, and you may have forecasts that are driving planned orders, or if confirmed dates will not be set up until after master planning is performed. So if you're make-to-stock and you've got a forecast out there, you've probably already have planned orders to support the forecast. So when ATP looks at that and you have it set to include planned orders, it sees that there's a planned order due to be supplied on a certain day, and it uses that as available inventory. All right. Also, like I said, if you say that you want to set the dates now for this order, and you have planned orders that might be included, and you want the planner to go ahead and run master planning so that it includes that new order that just got entered and generates a planned order, then that also would be a good solution, that you got a planned order out there now, and the dates can use that planned order as the dates to confirm to. Okay. So let's take a look at some of the settings. So if I'm going to drill over here to this item, drill into this item. Now this particular item, I'm going to look at the setup and default order settings. And of course, you can also have this on site-specific settings if you wanted to. So it's specific to each site, you can have different settings. But if I look over on the sales order tab, I have a sales lead time of 2 days. All right, that's automatically applied regardless of what I have on hand or anything else. It's always going to apply, a 2-day lead time. And then when I check this override, basically I'm overriding the defaults. Remember when we talked about the accounts receivable parameters, I had those set as defaults, but I'm overriding that, and I'm setting the delivery date control. In this case, I have it set to sales lead time, this particular one. And I have a 14-day ATP time fence, which I don't, since it's set to delivery date control sales lead time, it's not really using that. So I'm going to change this to ATP. And I've got 14 set as my time fence. Okay. And right now I'm not going to include the planned orders at this point. I just want to set it to the 14 days ATP. I save that. I'm going to go back to my order. And I'm going to re-enter my item. All right, so you notice that the confirmed ship date did change, and confirmed receipt date changed as well. So now it says 218 at 224. One of the things that you can do is you can look at a couple different scenarios of possibly how it came up with that. One of the things you can do is you can look at on the delivery tab, you have the ability to click simulate delivery date. And this is the same screen that you looked at before, where it's trying to determine, what dates can possibly work. One of the things you'll notice is that, it goes from, this date goes 2/3 to 2/9. That's a 6-day difference. Even though you have a transport days of 5 days, it's actually going 6. And of course, there's lots of reasons for that. Number one, the transport calendar that I have set up on this mode of delivery says that I don't ship on Sundays. So it's basically, that day is closed, so it's not going to ship on a Sunday. The other thing is that there may be weekends associated with when something can ship and be produced. That may also be in play here. So I've got each one of these goes to a separate day. You notice how it skips from Friday to Monday, and the reason for that is obviously is that the calendar, not associated in this case the mode of delivery, but the warehouse says that I'm closed on Saturday and Sunday. So if I can't ship it on those 2 days, but I can ship it on Monday if I choose to do that. But all this is dependent upon, had somebody beep in there. I'm not sure if they beeped in or beeped out. I'm not sure. Okay, that's somebody that joined. So I'm not sure in this case if the number of days here is simply because of the ATP time fence or lead time. But each one of these, is saying that I cannot utilize this date because it's within the sales lead time. Now, the lead time in this case is really related to the actual ATP time fence. So it's going all the way out to the 18th. And when you look at some of those dates, that's going out that full, 14 days time fence. And it's basically saying, hey, I don't have any available. All right. I can look at that if I cancel this, and I'm going to just look at the inventory. I'm going to click on hand, and I only have 49 available. So I need 50 to ship. I only have 49, and when I look at the ordered quantity, I have none on order. So I don't have any incoming receipts for this product either. So I've only got 49. So I can't ship it. So what it's doing is it's looking in the available time, ATP time fence, it's looking out that 14 days. It can't find any available receipts to utilize for shipping this order. So it's, after 14 days, it stops and says, okay, I can't go any further. You have to kind of keep that in mind with regard to when you're utilizing ATP. Now, what I am going to do is go back and change this item. One of the things I'm going to show you is on this item, this is, in my scenario, is a make-to-stock item. And if I look at the net requirements associated with this item, I do have planned production orders out there. And the reason for those planned production orders is because I do have a forecast associated with that item. So you see that I have a forecast of 50 pieces every month going out into the future. And I have planned orders to support, those forecasts, right? So I'm always staying, hopefully, ahead of the game with regard to that. So if I go back to the item setup, the default order settings, and go back to the sales order tab, I'm going to change this to include planned orders. Now when I go back, all the way back to the sales order, delete that item off there and re-enter that. Well, it gave us the same thing, didn't it? Let's see. Well, okay. Confirm ship date 2/18. Might be looking at the same situation here. Look at that again. Yeah, because that one's I don't have a sales order out there until the 27th. The planned order until the 27th. So it is again stopping at the ATP time fence. Sorry about that. All right, let's try something else here. Okay, I've got this order entered. This is another scenario where it's talking about confirmed dates versus requested dates. Sometimes you may want to have a situation where the default that you have for a given item, and this is probably the reason I had this set as sales lead time, is that I wanted it to actually just apply a lead time to the item, but not actually generate any kind of dates way out to the future until I had a chance to plan for it. Master planning obviously has the ability to look at these orders and plan for them associated to, okay, when is this planned order going to be completed? But it doesn't actually, when it uses the dates, it wants to use whatever dates are applied here. So one of the reasons that somebody might not want to have confirmed receipt dates here, especially if they're going to be different than your requested ship and receipt dates, is that when master planning runs, it's only going to look at the confirmed date as the date to plan by, not the requested date. So a lot of people don't like that, and that's why they don't want to immediately fill out the confirmed dates, because they want planning to take into consideration when the customer requested it. Okay? So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to delete that item. And I'm going to go back up to the order header to take the confirmed dates off there for a minute. And I'm going to add the item back. All right, you notice I still had the, hold on a second, I still have the item set to ATP. So I'm going to go back and change the default order settings on the item back to sales lead time. did change it a little bit because of the fact that there are some lead times being applied now that weren't before. And also, when you get into that, then you've got some controls on saying, okay, if I do that, then I might also have falling into the weekend. So this particular date is basically saying that I can't really, the first shipping date is actually going to be the Monday. So I can save that, and if I leave that open for a minute and I come back and let's say that during that day master planning is run. So go over here to master planning, and I'm going to click, go ahead and run that. I'll just run it for that item. Okay, coverage is updated. Go back to the sales order. Now, when I look at this item, and I look at the planned orders that are out there now, I now have another planned order that has the date of 2/12. And that planned order is because of the sales order that I just entered that says that, okay, I have a requirement here that I need this by 2/6 in order to ship it by 2/7. However, with planning, I can have settings that say, you know what, I know you need it by the 6th, but I can't get it to you until the 12th. So I can have this set up so that it automatically adjusts the requirement date on the planned order to match what the futures date is based on the available capacity. All right, and this is a situation I'm talking about where it's not really capable to promise, but if you include planned orders, you can kind of work it that way. So now if I go back to the order, and one of the things I can do is I can keep my requested ship dates now, my original requested ship dates. So I can go over here to the delivery tab and click on simulate delivery date. Now it says, okay, well, hold on a second. If I click on simulate delivery dates with the delivery date control still set at sales lead time, I can play around again with these numbers like I did before with regard to motor delivery and site and warehouse. And then also transfer to confirmed. That's not really what I was thinking of. What I wanted to do was for this order, if I change this delivery date control to available to promise, it automatically brings that screen up. It says, hey, the entered date, ship date of 2/7 is not valid because the requested quantity is not available according to the ATP calculation. But you notice now the date that it's providing is 2/14, which is a little different than what was there before, because now we have a planned order out there that it can use and say that, hey, that's when I'm going to receive some goods, so I can ship it by 2/14. All right. So that in this case, I can utilize that date if I want to. But one of the things I may have to do, in this case, I got to transfer it to requested. That's okay. As long as I can get that where I need it to on the date. If I had the confirmed dates in there, it would say transfer to confirmed. So that's one of the situations where, depending on how you do this, the order of events that you do it on, if I have my requested receipt dates and ship dates set the same as my confirmed receipt and ship dates, then when I change this to ATP, then it'll actually want to change the confirmed dates, not the receipt dates. All right. Go back. Okay. So like I said, upon entering the item and the order quantity, assuming that the item is set to ATP, it will recalculate requested ship and receipt dates based on the item availability. If the dates are already calculated and you change the quantity, it calculates the dates again, but this time it'll prompt. So like if the lead time is changed, or if the quantity is changed, and for whatever reason, because that quantity now is no longer available on the date that you want to ship it, it says lead times change, and it'll say, do you want to recalculate ship and receipt dates? You have the option of saying no in this case. So in those cases, sometimes, you might want to do that, but just because the customer originally requested something. But if they're changing the quantity, then that changes the whole game, I guess. All right. And like I said, the user can simulate delivery dates to see what effect changing the site warehouse mode will have on delivery. If the user changes the delivery date control to ATP, the simulation screen will appear automatically. So we just talked about. In that case, like I said, I had confirmed dates in this example I'm showing here. I already had confirmed and receipt dates, confirmed ship and receipt dates filled in. So the screen that came up, you notice on this screenshot, I've got transfer to confirmed down at the button, not transfer to requested. So that's where you can actually change confirmed date, but leave the requested date alone. The other option, obviously, is to do disable delivery date control, and that just changes it back to none, and that gives you the ability to put whatever dates in there you want. So like I said, any changes made will be transferred. The message will reappear until valid date is chosen or delivery date control is disabled. So if you click cancel here and you try to still save the line, well, it's going to pop back up again until you turn that ATP off or select valid date. All right, kind of forcing the issue there. Okay, so just for your information, straight from the documentation, ATP equals ATP for the previous period meaning day, and plus the receipts for the current period, minus the issues for the current period, and then minus the net issue quantity for each future period until the period when the sum of receipts for blah, 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 blah. You can read that. That's out of the documentation. Basically what it means is it's going to go day by day. It's going to include all receipts for that day and all issues for that day. The net difference between those two is your available inventory. So, it's looking at all other sales orders that need that item, and it's looking at all other receipts coming in to support that, including the one you're on, and it decides whether or not you have inventory available on what particular day. And that's what it's doing. Now, one real important note before we stop. Previous period does not mean prior to today. It means previous to the period or day it is calculating. ATP does not consider receipts or issues prior to today. So in order for ATP to work, you need to have all your dates updated as future dates. In other words, any production order you have out there, planned order, they all need to be replanned, rescheduled to include future dates. Because if they don't, then basically ATP doesn't consider them a receipt. This may be, I don't know if this is the way they planned it, but it just means that you have to have all the other parts working together in order for this to work. So scheduled production orders, you've got to maintain your scheduled production orders out into the future. You can't have a production order that has a scheduled date prior to today because ATP won't see it as a valid receipt. All right. Same thing with issues. I mean, if you have late sales orders, it won't see those as valid issues either. Which again may or may not be correct philosophy, but that's the way it works. Okay. So this is just a restatement of what I just mentioned. All right. For ATP calculations to make the order, just an example, let's say an order is entered for a make-to-order item. There is none on hand and the ATP time frame is set to 60 days. At the time the order is entered, if there's no planned order or incoming order at that time, the ATP calculation is going to give a 60-day lead time if you have that set as ATP. And if the user uses that as a confirmed date, then when MRP runs, it sees that date as the date to plan by. So even if you recalculate ATP, the planned order is way out in the future also. In this case, it is suggested that a sales lead time is used initially, not ATP. So, for instance, if you go ahead and set that confirmed date, that's the date that MRP sees as the date that it needs to plan by. So when master planning runs, it sees that as the date, sets up a planned order for 60 days out, and it thinks everything is all good. So that's why it's important in those situations not to set the confirmed date until after planning is run. Well, I appreciate everybody's time, and I hope it was helpful for you.